On the way back from work, after giving Kevin a ride home from Walmart to cash his check, he was telling me a little after we had driven past Waterwiz about the water park he would build if he won the lottery. He pointed to the opposite side of Cranberry Highway. The Waterwiz was about half a mile after, and he said it would be the perfect place. I told him that he should just buy out Waterwiz so that there wouldn't be competition, but he said there wasn't enough space for the park that he wanted to build. I pointed to the houses around the area that he was thinking about and told him that the people wouldn't like a water park built in their backyard, but he said he would just buy them out. He would have to pay off a few politicians in order to get permission. Yup, he said, all you gotta do is pay off the right people. You just gotta grease their palms and the water park would be up in no time. I told him if he lived long enough, he might make the money back that he had sunken into it, but he claimed he would make his money back in no time. I started to imagine the park through and fantasized about it too. The slides would be way taller and more interesting than the ones at Waterwiz. It'd be something new and grand that I could get excited about. Unlike Waterwiz, that I had been to as a kid and no longer appealed to me. You learn to trust God to watch over you while you're sleeping. There was no heat in Jim's house. That must be why he hung out so much at Mr. G's over the winter. He needed to figure out how to waterproof the tent. Do you think I'll learn? Jim got paid under the table and with food and beer. I said I wasn't looking for a place for some reason. And he said, yeah, God's trying to do this and He'll say, I'll guide you through it. He was saying before you learn to survive, but then you have to figure out why God is even keeping you alive. He said during a thunderstorm, God is saying, look how powerful I am, but I'll keep you safe. I had pictured the spot being a lot closer to the beach, and possibly entrenched in all sorts of vines, but it was right off the road, in a flat clearing on the top of the hill. Kevin's giant legs led the way up the hill, past some poison-looking plants that I carefully avoided. There it was. He had left the tent there all winter, and it was still there. The ropes that barely were holding it ran from the tent to the surrounding trees. The tent itself was pretty dilapidated, and I was pretty concerned because Kevin said that there might be some things living inside the tent now. It also occurred to me that since Kevin just left the tent, someone else might have stumbled upon it at this point and knew about the location. I even asked Kevin later at work, what if there was a serial killer that might find me? But he said as long as you didn't have any cereal with you, you had nothing to worry about. Also, Kevin knew that there was probably treasure somewhere in Sagamore Beach, in the areas near the marsh where the houses currently stood. He said this was because this is where the water line used to be, and ships used to crash ashore carrying silver and other precious metals. He said the way to find it was to go out there with a metal detector, but first you had to get permission from the owner of the land and promise them a percentage of whatever you found. He claimed he had already mapped it all out, with the places marked off that he had already looked. Damien decided he should go back up to the site of the tent and set it up and see if he could figure it out without Kevin. He didn't want to be seen with his car parked right on the side of the road, so that was another reason not to bring Kevin, so he could park far away at the playground near the canal. He saw a yellow truck on the way, and it looked like it belonged to some state workers, and he grew concerned that they could arrest him for trying to camp. On his way, he realized the truck had faded behind the curve in the road, and he knew there was no one else looking, and he ran up the hill as fast as he could. He had been told not to be seen. It just wasn't good for people to know you were camping. He got up there and saw that everything was still there, but he didn't start setting up yet. He just sat on the fallen tree near the site, just getting his bearings. He wanted to hang out there a good amount and get used to the idea of this being his new home. It also gave him a chance to calm his nerves and decide if he was going to set up the tent. The first step was simple, and he saw the two narrow chains of plastic that he was supposed to thread through the holes. And after a little consideration, he decided that these must go on the outside of the tent. He didn't want to have it inside out. Already he was off to a shaky start, and it happened to be such a windy day. This wasn't good for what he was attempting. He could barely get the site and the tent to sit still while he was putting it together. And once he had finally all pinned it down, a huge flurry of wind took hold of it and undid most of his work. It kept filling with air and swept over the hill, through the trees, until it looked like it was being carried away like a hot air balloon. It would take him up and away if he didn't get it to become more stable. He managed to tie some of it down with rope that Kevin had left behind, using a couple of orange stakes, and got two big fallen tree limbs that he saw and put them down beside the tent to make sure it didn't go anywhere. He was pretty happy with himself at this point, but he wanted to test it out, so he got inside and laid on his back and tried to get used to his new home. The wind was still bothering his ears, though. He was hoping it didn't get this windy a lot over the summer. It was usually hectic getting up to the tent at night, and it could be even worse getting down from the hill in the morning without being seen. The process made his heart race. He used a light Kevin gave him to shine his way up the hill, but he had concerns that the light might get him caught. All his fears were starting to make the whole thing not so much worth the effort. He started using the cell phone to light the way, but when he got up to the tent, he would carefully shine the light on it to make sure there was no serial killer ready to jump out at him. And luckily, there never was. But one night, the night that turned out to be his last, he noticed something was off when he shined the light in. When he took a closer look, there turned out to be a pretty big rip. This was a concern, and at first he hoped it might have just been done by some sort of animal like a raccoon. That hope was dashed when he saw a corresponding tear in the tarp, in the same exact spot, as if someone had taken a long knife and made one big slash through both the tarp and the tent at the same time. His stomach kinda dropped at this realization, and he began getting pretty nervous. A thought occurred to him, that maybe they had used his knife, the one his dad gave him, to make the cut. But this was unlikely. Whoever it was probably had their own giant knife to cut things with. The next time, it's gonna be your throat. That is what he pictured this person saying as they cut the tent. He knew for sure that it was time to leave, and he took everything but the ripped tent and the tarp and the air mattress, which oddly enough had popped the night before. He took it all to the bottom of the hill and drove back, a little bit anxious to gather it all. This meant his car was a bit cluttered once again, and he didn't know exactly where he was going to go. But he was almost relieved that he wouldn't have to sneak up and down the hill anymore. His eyes are swimming now.
Swimming now.
Let me go, let me go, let me go.
Through the fall.
Let me go, let me go, let me go. Let me go, let me go, let me go.
Through the fall.
Let me go, let me go, let me go.
Like stones that sink through blood.
Let me go, let me go, let me go.
Light with God. To lay me down upon this creation.
And these eyes are swimming now through the fog, like stones that sink through blood, delight with God to lay me down upon this creation.